great to see you all here. It's been a hectic schedule, roller discoing and ping-ponging and marathon drinking, so it's good to see so many of you who've managed to join us. As James says, we do feel it's a very important session. This has been a devastating year and a half, when a number of journalists and filmmakers have been killed in conflict zones. Often very experienced journalists, Chris Hondros, who was killed in Libya, Anton Hammerl, Colvin, of course. In particular, we remember Tim Hetherington, and in fact, we're in this very room about a year and a half ago. Tim was on a panel talking about his work in West Africa, and also with Restrepo, his Oscar-nominated film. And of course, it's devastating to think that these incredibly talented people have been killed while doing their work. So we've come here together. All of the people here know these other journalists, we're friends with them, have experienced moments with them, and what we've been discussing on a bigger level, how to deal with these issues of safety. How can you get to conflict zones, working conflict zones, and as safely as possible, and get the story without dying to tell the story. And so we have here, and I'm going to get each person to sort of introduce themselves a bit, and the way we're going to introduce the people on the panel is to, each person's going to show a piece of their work or commissioned work, and we're then going to sort of, hopefully that will stir the discussion. And there's really a few key areas we wanted to bring out. We want to involve you as much as possible. So we'll come to some questions as early as we can, but essentially we want to discuss those issues of the dangers that exist now in working in these environments, and what exists in terms of courses to help train people, educate people about working in those places. And then the bigger issues of trying to get the story and get it commissioned, and the various issues involved with that. So I have Vaughan Smith here to the right of me, who runs the Frontline Club and used to run the Frontline Agency. And Vaughan is going to show a couple of pieces of his work, and I'd like him to maybe tell us a bit about that, and then we'll see those clips.
The first two clips, there are three clips. The first two clips are about a documentary called Shooting Robert King, and they're clips from that documentary. They're really there to lighten up a little bit, because actually it may seem slightly sacrilegious to say, but war is funny. Also, the documentary was really made because there were a lot of, the industry, the news industry, has an inclination to make documentaries about itself that presents journalists, war journalists, as sort of two-dimensional hero figures. And we tried to show Robert King as a more of a human being. I'm not entirely sure what the next clip is. I understand it's something from Afghanistan. I'm not quite sure what lessons we'll get from that, but I think we probably need to see it first.
It's something that you sort of filming on the front line.
Oh yes, filming on the front line in Afghanistan in 2007, so it's very exciting. And we will then see what we can get from that. So there are my clips.
So we're in the dark as much as you are, so let's get going.
Everyone knows what's going on around there, nice open fields.
Two sections of 6 platoons C Company 1 Royal Anglians are being tasked with keeping the Taliban out of the village of Kushal-Kaleh, just 100 metres from their patrol base.
You'll soak up the atmospherics, see what's going on around, keep your eyes on the firing points as best you can, especially you boys sharpshooters, and we should hopefully pop out in front of the insurgents just after 11 along here. That's you, go and get your kit ready, and I'll see you on the HLS in a few minutes.
We're a bit struck. We usually have to patrol every day. It's all right.
Alright, load. Make ready.
They leave their base at 10 AM. The first man clears a route with a mine detector, and they all follow his path. The hazards of Taliban improvised explosive devices, IEDs, is so great that when they're fired on, they still have to stick to this path. They can't run for cover. Shortly after leaving the base, they're fired on.
Hondros. Love it.
Okay, it was the other way around. I think. This is Robert King.
Bullet goes through the side door here, misses Jeff's leg about an inch. Bullet comes through here, goes through the head seat. I have my head down. I don't know if it happened when I was in the car, when I was out of the car. I don't fucking know. Can't find the bullet. And then a bullet comes through here and gives me a hot kiss on the ass. And here's one of the bullets we found that lodged into Richard's camera, the beta cam. The one we're filming with right now. This bullet lodged into the camera that we're filming with now. And it still works. That's a Sony for you.
Where are you headed?
Frontline. Some positions. Firing on the Serbs.
Dangerous.
So I say, so I hear. Yeah, a little bit. It's not the safest.
Rob, I think you're quite safe. Mush, here we go.
Alright, who goes next? Me? Guess we have no fucking choice.
What do you want to do?
I'm going with them. I'm not gonna sit here like a duck. That's for sure.
Tvoj, ne valja bijelo. Poprema. Možeš ti.
Halo, mali novinar! Hajde, trči, bolan, trči!
How close was the round that went over you when you scooched out? Was it just over your head?
I didn't see it.
You heard the whiz though, yeah? Yeah.
Just a whistle.
Vidi se daleko.
I'll switch.
What's happening? What?
My pen's here is too wide. Can't see it.
So you're going to put up underneath the t-shirt?
No, I'm too easy of a target for snipers.
Like that? To ujede, ko stavi.
Maybe I'll just do black.
Spit your arms up more, Tam. I want to go on. I want to go to the front line. Frontest line they've got. Because if it's going off and you're close enough, you can get the looks on their faces, which tells a much better story than if you're hanging back, let's say, with a telephoto lens. The audio might be the same, but the magic is getting their faces as the bullet comes over. I'm not worried at all. I've come to so many front lines that it's like taking a double-decker bus. So what do you want to do, mate?
What choices?
Well, you stay here and get some shots of the soldiers, maybe some of the burnt-out buildings, and I'll just go a tiny bit further and see what I can get on audio.
Are there trenches up ahead?
I would imagine so if it was a front line. But, I mean, I think if we go down there, what you just experienced there will be like kisses from a baby. Right.
Proszę, cześć, samo mówią. O tym były nikt nie diszy.
What line was that?
I want to say it was a second.
You want to say something about that? Okay, well, look, I mean, I am actually a strong advocate of freelancers. However, this is the clip I always use to sort of explain what not to do, so just as everything we shouldn't do in it. And it's a shame some of the translations weren't there, but if you speak Serbocrat, then you will see it's quite funny they're talking about, they do point out that he shouldn't be there with his white flag jacket quite early on. There's a substantial lack of clarity of mission there, I would suggest, insofar they don't really know why they're there, they don't have a purpose, and they become an amusement for the soldiers on the front line. And so yeah, it's about as bad as it gets. The funny thing about that white flat jacket is it did actually have a little metal plate just there. And if you took it out, it said to protect you from steering columns, which is not a high velocity bullet, obviously. And he got it in a sort of second-hand shop somewhere for some reason. So the whole thing was disastrous. But I think the documentary does illustrate how Robert King moves from that extraordinary state of amateurism into something completely different there. And the documentary is about that arc. Nevertheless, it was a sort of true picture of what a lot of journalism was like at the time. And what I would do, as underlined, is saying it's not just freelancers who are crap. At the time, the industry was just as bad. So, as for the first bit, I'm not quite sure what to say about the first bit. It's just there.
I mean, what about for you though, Vaughan? I mean, that trip from Afghanistan, which was a few years ago, I mean, what's going through your mind when you're lying there in that field?
Well, no, it's...
what am I doing?
Oh no, not at all. Not what am I doing. I mean, exactly what I was doing there. I mean, I was trying to make a documentary. I'm still working on it. Hoping to go back about closer to the soldiers to understand. I mean, the British soldiers have a real phlegmatic approach to these things. You don't see it necessarily from that clip. And also, I find that television, the whole embedding system, seems to me to have failed to really tell the story of what's been going on there. And it compresses these things. That shootout went on for 3 hours. And a soldier had 600 rounds of ammunition. You could fire that off in about 2 minutes, but they were still fighting for that period of time. So in a sense, my documentary is trying to show more of a reality of what's happening, because I think television compresses it and distorts the reality of it. Nevertheless, you do feel slightly exposed in the middle of the field when you can't take cover, but then you get on with the filming. So.
Well, we'll come on to some of these issues a bit further on. Siobhan, you're on the other side, as it were, in terms of the commissioning side. Would you like to tell us about what we're going to see of the audience?
Sure. So I'm Commissioner for News and Current Affairs at Channel 4. I look after most of our foreign programmes. I used to go and make these films in the field, and then I was series editor of Unreported World, Channel 4's foreign affairs strand. And now I commission the films. I have to say, if anybody ever came up to me and I said, where do you intend to go? And they said, I want to go to the frontest line. I would immediately pull out the commission. Yeah, really interesting. Off you go then. I won't be having anything to do with that. This isn't my work. These are just 2 films that we recently commissioned. One is Aidan Hartley's film in the Nuba Mountains in Sudan, which was very recent. This was just this series, and last series, Ramita Navai's film called Undercover Syria. And I picked these 2 clips because on the face of it, when somebody comes in and proposes these 2 ideas, they both are incredibly dangerous. They both at the time, if you cast your mind back, this was towards the beginning of the conflict in Syria. It was before Homs and so on, so people really weren't operating outside Damascus at all. It was a new proposition, and it was really quite, it hadn't really been done before. And likewise, the Newman Mine was was a very dangerous proposition. There was, there's one road in, there's one road out, and there's bombing from the air. So as you know, you went part of that way. And so I thought it was interesting to work through why, even though they were very, very dangerous propositions, I decided that there was a way that we could do them.
Should we see the clips and then listen?
Yeah.
The school held its morning assembly. There were no classrooms here. The kids take their lessons under the acacia trees.
Although we are facing very many problems and we are still able to carry on, we wish this condition to be better in the future.
The children had spotted an Antonov bomber.
These are amazing scenes. They say that when Antonov sees large groups, then it circles over and comes back to attack. But these are children. So this is what the children of the Nuba Mountains have to deal with under Khartoum's blitz. Almost every day they have to run for shelter amongst the rocks. Today it was an assembly.
I spoke to the head teacher, Boutros Atom.
Together they are staying inside the caves, there is no water to drink, and sometimes there's snakes inside the caves.
Has this area been bombed?
Yeah, several times.
Right, so the danger is very real?
Yes, it's exactly.
Okay, well I hope you can keep your children safe.
Yeah, with this when the plane come, we make them to run to the caves to save their lives.
من 6 ساعات دهموا وين دهم؟
3 hours later, Abu Jafar received a call from a lookout outside. They confirmed the government, the Shabiha, was conducting violent house-to-house searches. The lookout warned the militia was on our street. Malik, Mohammed and Abu Jafar all hid in a cupboard. We were advised not to hide, but to make sure we had our passports ready to show we weren't Syrians. We hid our camera, but used a mobile phone to film. We could hear the screams from next door as the militia raided the house. A mother was pleading with them not to take her son. After 6 hours, we could no longer hear movement outside. A lookout had just called Abu Jafar to tell him what had happened.
فيها واحد بنعرفه صارت النسوان تبكي صارت الأولاد تبكي شافوا الولد كتفوا واخذوه خفنا كثير لما يجوا لعنا ويطلعوا يقعدوا لما يجوا كمان إذا أخذونا ضرب وتكسير ما عندهم رحمة ما عندهم شفقة.
I mean, for you, Siobhan, it's sort of a different set of responsibilities away, isn't it? Because you have to obviously take care of the correspondence you're sending out there to make these programs and teams. And it must be quite anxious moments with that.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, definitely, I find it that more difficult than making those decisions for myself on the ground. If I was in Sudan or Syria, so there is, but these things are worked through very, very carefully. That is the thing, is the amount of preparation that goes into those projects is absolutely enormous. But I think the key thing, both of those projects, was that you have to weigh up whether the amount of risk that you take on projects. I think it has to be guided by how much the story needs to be told. There's the scales, isn't there, where you've got risk on one side and you've got for us it's how unreported the story is. That's where what we do is try and do stories that other people in mainstream media aren't covering. So Nuba, for example, was getting very, very little attention. Tens of thousands of people in dire straits, rains coming in. It felt like a story that actually had to be told and had to be told then. And Syria, obviously, at the same time. But the thought of Ramita, who's done 18 films for us, kind of carrying in safe house with her, holding her passport above her head, waiting for the Shabia to come knocking on the door to prove that she's not Syrian, is obviously, it's terrifying, but she absolutely wanted to do it, and I felt that they had an amazing network of Syrian activists and who planned this for months. I mean, it was several months of planning before she went, so we felt that we were minimising risk as much as we could, and that it was one that was definitely worth taking, because as has been revealed subsequently, it was a really important story.
And I think you were telling me earlier, sort of security protocols are now running at sort of 50 pages or something.
Well, it totally depends. When you try and keep security protocols to a minimum, I don't know, many people here have been through the charming process of trying to enforce security protocols. They tend to really piss people off, because they feel that they've got lots of boxes that they have to tick and hoops that they have to jump through, but actually they are invaluable documents, both for me to be able to genuinely assess whether somebody has really thought through exactly what they're getting themselves into, but also the producers end up thinking that after they've done it, that they have thought through all the different scenarios that could possibly happen to them whilst they're away, and because they've already worked through how they would respond to that, such as what happens if you're caught with activists in a safe house, which actually was a scenario that we had worked through in the document before we went, and it was, this thing of having your passport was key. I think that they end up being really useful tools if they're done properly, to help people prepare for going to really scary places.
We're talking about scary places. We've been discussing this before we came in about the different risks, because there's obviously the front lines, and then there is other sort of urban environments where people are working, and sometimes you don't expect certain risks when you're in these places. I mean, car crashes, for example, happen a lot when you're in places like this. I was in Baghdad a few years ago, and suddenly the car lurched, and I was thrown out, and everyone was thrown out, and I thought we'd been hit by an IED. Actually, this driver, this plonker, just sort of done a U-turn straight into a truck, and we were sort of sprawled on the ground. I was expecting another bomb to go off, and you never know where these kind of risks might come from, and it's in that context that I want to show you a couple of clips of stuff that I worked on last year. The first clip is a short clip of a sort of trailer that I did of a planned film, which then ran into some problems, but from Benghazi, and sort of front lines there. And the second clip is something that I did for PBS Frontline, called Gigi's Revolution, which then evolved into a longer BBC film. And I'm showing these clips because it actually just shows you, in an urban environment, how you can run into trouble. And I just show those clips now, and then I think we'll also engender a bit more discussion. Outrageously, Gaddafi denounces his own people as rats and degenerates. The people I meet, housewives, school teachers, musicians, it's their voices, it's their bravery that compels me to stay.
Effectively sign up, by your hands and put your hands up. Nobody can stop us, we will never give up. You can't treat effectively with no sacrifice. You can't win the war with no fight.
You don't drink, you don't sleep with girls, you don't take
are short on time. We don't have the time. We're racing against time.
We are crying, all these people that died, thousands of people dying.
We deserve to live in dignity and freedom. We are not asking for a lot.
They've opened their lives up to us, their houses to us. They've told their stories, and unfortunately, by telling those stories, they may now be at grave risk. Al Jazeera cameraman has been shot dead. It's like a spasm of fear that went through all the journalists. Gaddafi had said, after all, the journalists are the enemy. It's just a matter of time, perhaps a few days, before Gaddafi's forces will besiege the city. Every day, the supporter, hundreds of young recruits head to the front.
We're glad that the world had the chance to see what the Libyan people have been suffering over the past 42 years.
Now we leave those people behind to face a very, very uncertain and I fear a very nasty and perhaps quite bloody future.
Are you worried that Gaddafi still might come back?
Actually, he came back, I'm back. We're all going to die.
Yeah, I'm going to the clear now. I want to see what the situation is on the ground. I'm going to talk with my fellow activists there, see what's the feeling out there. Because
even here, but Tahrir Square, there are tensions.
This guy is going to give us now some hassle, so just get ready for that.
My friend. Something okay?
لا 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 ثانية أنا دلوقتي هم بيعملوا فيلم عن
Visiting Egypt.
لا الحاجات المكسرة مفيش
No, هجيب لك الشرطة العسكرية، هجيب لك الشرطة العسكرية.
Let's go.
ممنوع.
Let's go. Tell the driver we're going.
The whole movement is being undermined right now by people and by ignorance and by lack of political life in Egypt. I'm worried about it being turned around because I already see it happening in the streets with average citizens, with people like my family. We're not a strong movement in Egypt. I know this. I know we're not strong. We're not many. We're not in every community, and we're not in every place. Protests will never die out, but the momentum and the support for it, that might die out.
That same day, the pro-Mubarak supporters are trying to get into the square.
The swarms of pro-Mubarak supporters are trying to infiltrate Tahrir Square. Lots of rock throwing back and forth by us commuters. The shit is going down. People have lost their tempers already and it's getting really violent. And now I'm trying to get as close as I can without, like, obviously being hurt. These are anti-Mubarak supporters, anti-Mubarak protesters. I mean, it's literally being bloodshed on the streets. They're telling me to stay in because it gets violent and they're throwing rocks and it's getting... This is like war.
to move straight on to Giles, and we can sort of discuss further these sort of different risks. Giles, would you like to tell us a bit about what we're going to see from your work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a stills photographer, so just a few of the images I've taken over the years. A couple of them just to illustrate points when actually I've been incredibly stupid and almost got myself killed in the past. And then the final few pictures are actually pictures when I was injured last year in Afghanistan that maybe I kind of put on there to illustrate the point about what happens after an incident, because obviously a lot is talking about not putting yourself in that position, but then it's also important to talk about what happens if something does happen. There's a saying, always used to be about the golden hour, if you were injured, and now they talk about the platinum 10 minutes, and so those photographs illustrate that point. This first picture was when I was just starting, so about 10 years ago in Angola, and this again sort of sums up how easy it is for things to go wrong. I've been very well drilled by this NGO on safety protocols, working in these minefields and what to do and what not to do. Paid full attention, and then obviously as soon as I actually started taking photographs, one of the main things was they were clearing a path, marking it with sticks, and you kind of have to stay in that area. And as soon as you're looking through a viewfinder, looking through a camera, you start to forget where that is. So if you can actually see, obviously you can see the line of sticks. Evidently I'm not in that position right then, and about a couple of minutes after I took that picture, I actually stepped on a mine and didn't go off, which taught me a lesson right at the beginning. That was actually connected to a larger anti-tank mine that I kind of uprooted, which taught me very, very early on to try and follow what everybody tells you wherever you are, and never, when you're looking through a viewfinder, it's so easy to forget where you are, to start wandering around, and I learned the lesson. This is just one of the pictures I took in Bangladesh, in Sudan. And then I put this photograph in, again, to show, illustrate 2 points really, of my own stupidity and the stupidity of others. My own stupidity was I was in South Sudan and I was desperate to get a story on the White Army, which is an illegal militia there that supposedly had been disbanded, and I heard that it was still around. And I was staying on a Médecins Sans Frontières compound and was trying to get out to meet some of these people from this white army, and I've been trying to negotiate for weeks with various people, and everyone kept telling me it doesn't exist anymore, you can't get to see it, it's not going to happen. And the fighting was getting a bit intense, so everybody had been told from this Médecins Sans Frontières compound not to leave whatever was going on. They couldn't leave. Obviously I could if I wanted to, but it didn't make much sense to do it. Then one day somebody turned up, somebody I'd been negotiating with, and he said, look, I can get you to meet a couple of members, maybe 1 or 2 of the White Army, but you have to come now. And so immediately all kind of sensible protocols of telling somebody where I was going, of making sure I was in communication, just kind of go out the window. He's like, it's just around the corner. I'm like, okay. So leave the compound, get in his vehicle, suddenly you're driving for quite a long time. Then it all starts to dawn on you, maybe you've gone, a little bit too far. Then we go to this compound expecting to meet 1 or 2 soldiers, and I turned around and there was this whole kind of group of guys brandishing their weapons.
Poison guns, huh?
Yeah, all very overexcited because I was there to take their pictures. Later on it developed when their commander turned up who hadn't wanted me to be there as well. Suddenly I literally did find myself stuck in this place, not sure where I was, kind of going, safety protocols, safety protocols. But I mean, for me that was just a good example of no matter how, by that time, I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years and thought I was pretty sensible. But the trouble is, when a story or something starts happening, it's very easy to get carried away with the moment, to just go with it, and then realise you've completely stepped out of your safety zone. Then the other point I was going to make on this picture, which is the stupidity of others. The biggest danger, and actually this is one of the times when I'm closest to being shot, was their enthusiasm. It wasn't actually, at the particular point, it wasn't particularly threatening. It was just that as a bunch of young kids, what they were more interested in is every time I took a picture, they wanted to see the picture on the back of my camera. So you take the photograph, and then you would get about 20 guys with AK-47s that weren't on safety, rushing around to try and look, and all pushing their guns into your neck and the rest of it, trying to do it. And then actually, just as I was taking this picture, you can see this kid here And literally, as I took that picture, he suddenly fired by mistake because he was trying to work out this weapon he'd just been given it. And you can see him looking at it quite curiously there. And literally, yeah, I took the photograph, and the next I knew was this, he was going to go like that with a machine gun. And everyone was ducking and all the rest of it. So
it's very much like that in Libya. I mean, the young rebels have no clue what they're doing. And a journalist friend was talking to one of the rebels, and he was holding this RPG, and he suddenly fired it off without realising. And they were looking up, like, where do we go? Like, we're running different directions. It was insane.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's an example of just that complete awareness. I think, you know, I remember when I was learning to drive, actually, somebody said to me, always assume everyone else is really stupid. And I think there's something about that when you're in all these places. You know, always assume somebody is going to do the most ridiculous thing possible. And it's just pictures from my work in Sudan. And then these are from my personal holiday snaps. And this is me kind of lying down there in that moment when I'd just been stepped on an IED. It was a very quiet day. We were out on patrol. And again, it's one of those things that it's the moment when you don't expect it. We've been ambushed every day for a couple of weeks, and this one particular day was a particularly nice, quiet day. We were just standing outside a compound. I turned to go and have a chat with one of the American soldiers, actually, to try and bum a cigarette off him. And as I turned, stepped on an IED, and off it went. And the guy was actually in front of me on this patrol. He wrote to me later to say he felt guilty that he hadn't spotted or hadn't stepped on it himself, but it's a good example of somebody that had done, I think, 4 or 5 tours in Afghanistan, an elite unit, the 101st Airborne, and there was no way he could have seen it himself, so no amount of training or preparation, if there's something like that, it's going to get you. But what was key was the fact that the guys I was with were able to get tourniquets on me to stop the bleeding. My legs were kind of clear off straight away. Actually, I was lying there, I was looking up at the tree, I could see my boxer shorts in the tree. And I remember thinking, that's not good. Just sort of lying there and seeing that. But yeah, it's the fact that being with people that were medically trained, they weren't doctors, they didn't have to be. In fact, you know, they were well trained, but what they had to do was incredibly simple. It was get tourniquets on me and stop the bleeding. You know, I think I'm right in saying that 90% of the people that make it back to Kandahar, to the hospital, survive, no matter how traumatic their injuries. The fact is, though, that about 90% of people die through blood loss within the first 10-15 minutes. And I think that's just what's incredibly important, is these things will happen. It's a dangerous, risky profession. This is me on my way to the helicopter. But without people around you straight away that can give you that life-saving help, then you will just die. And I think it's really important when you're in these scenarios. I've kind of always been a bit of a wimp in situations, and always been very careful to always work with people like Medicine Sans Frontières, emergencies. I'm always working with a group of doctors, which is kind of actually, you know, puts you in the safest environment. When you're with a bunch of American soldiers embedded, you know, people said, don't you find that, you know, the risk of that? And actually, you know what, it's a lot safer than working in the middle of Africa, where if something happens, it could take you 3 days to get to a hospital. You know, you're getting medevac out, you're going to get the best care. One of my friends who works at an accident emergency in London was saying, even if I turned up in London with these injuries, I wouldn't have survived. It's the fact that, you know, Kandahar and Bastion are probably the only 2 places in the world that could have saved me. But at the end of the day, what saved me is just the tourniquets, the most basic. I think they're 20 quid each, the most basic medical equipment.
What's it like becoming the story?
Very uncomfortable. You know, as a photographer, you don't like to be on the other side of the camera. Actually, a good example of, we were talking about this picture last night, when these pictures were taken, I didn't actually know they were taken. My mind was on other things. Noticed as a photographer kind of lurking in the corner. And my family was a bit worried about showing me the pictures, because they were like, you know, how's he going to take it? And I saw this photograph after a couple of months of being in hospital. And I've been quite ill in hospital, I got infected, and so I've been in intensive care for a couple of months. And I was coming out, and I'd heard sort of my family speaking about these photographs, and what photographs? I was a photographer there, but we were worried about seeing pictures. And I saw this picture, and I swear the first thing I thought was, I wouldn't have cropped it like that. I was like, I brought that in a bit more like that and done that. So in some ways, you know, it's like becoming the story is almost abstract, really. I mean, you kind of, I see, you know, the pictures are you know, becoming bigger in some ways than the stories I was covering. yeah, it's a very uncomfortable position to be in, but at the same time, it means you can get to highlight some of the work you're doing and show those stories. But yeah, it's not a position I'd recommend for you.
I mean, a lot of people who come across people like yourself and us think they're a bit bonkers, that, you know, what the hell are these guys doing, going out to these places, and a bit, often be accused of being a bit reckless. Do you think you were reckless in some ways?
I think, you know, possibly 10 years ago, I wasn't necessarily reckless, but a bit foolhardy and unwise. I think I become incredibly safety conscious by the end, by the time I was doing this kind of work. But by definition, if you're going to go into a war zone, you know, war zones are where people are trying to kill each other. That's what they are. And if you walk into the middle of that, you are putting yourself at risk. I think for me, the important thing was always to think about exit strategies. I had a friend who was in the SAS, and he was a bit obsessed by exit strategies. And you'd be at the pub, he's like, what's our exit strategy? Like, just having a drink. But the principle of it is, yeah, like, why do we want to exit? We just got in. But it is a really, for me, it's a really important thing. Wherever I'm working, I'm always thinking of what would happen if something happened. How do I get out of here? How do I get medical help? And I think most people don't think about that. As I say, you will run into risks, but it could be a car accident. It could be a guy that hasn't locked his AK-47 and accidentally shoots you in the foot. But that, in the middle of nowhere, if you haven't got a good plan for getting out of there, could be the end of you.
I think you told me earlier, Charles, that you, even though you've been working for many years in sort of conflict zones, you've never done a hostile environment course. You haven't even, by the time you've done that.
No.
That made any difference, do you think?
No, I mean, I did a medical training, because, again, my kind of route into this work is working with NGOs and charities. And a lot of them have quite strict safety protocols if you're working with them. That was all based on medical training, and that's what I dealt with. I never did a hostile environment. My personal feeling is certainly wouldn't have made any difference on that day, and I don't think there's anything that I've gone through that would have been helped by having done hostile training environment. The sirens going.
Is that anything to do with you?
Yeah.
You set the sirens off.
You see me when I go to an airport, I really do set off the sirens.
I mean, that's a good point to sort of bring in this issue of hostile environment courses. I mean, a lot of people have their own views on it, and they're often quite divided. I think that, I mean, maybe many people here have also done hostile environment courses. It's usually required now if you go to anywhere that's sort of a conflict zone or a red zone or whatever it may be called. I don't know, what's your feeling, Vaughan, about hostile environment courses generally? Have you done one? What was your experience?
I helped with the first. In 1993, there was a company called AKE, and we were consultants as freelancers. I think they're good, but I think they're quite expensive. I think we need to also look harder at them. I think there are things that are not being covered that need to be covered. And a part of, I think, the problem the news industry has is that it's kind of bolted all this stuff on. It's hired other people in to do this. So we've got good relationships with ex-SAS people who will teach us what to do. And there's a risk, and I think that we, as an industry, suffer from, therefore not really changing ourselves. And I think that there are problems. I think you get varied views on the courses, but the most important thing I think everybody agrees on is actually the first aid, which is something that I think people can see could help them in other situations in their lives.
I mean, after what happened to Tim Hetherington, Sebastian Junger, who was Tim's partner on Making Restrepo and worked with him for many years, has started a course which is free for freelancers, and it's very much focused around medical treatment. I think in my experience and others, you know, when you've done these courses, you can roll around in a ditch in Herefordshire, you don't really sort of learn much from it. But actually the medical side was very important. And unfortunately, we were hoping Sebastian would be able to join us at the festival, but he can't. But we have spoken with him, and some people have already done this course, and they're sort of singing praises about it. What have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details of Sebastian's course, to be honest, but I mean, it's often at these panels when everybody agrees with each other, but I think, yeah, it is, medical training is absolutely the key thing. Yeah, I would much rather that somebody who came to me who was going off somewhere where there was a chance that they were going to get hurt, which there is most places that we send, had just done a very recent, as in a month before, one day, very tailored, intensive first aid training course, than a £10,000 hostile environment course from a year before. You know, that's actually much more likely to be of real practical use to them whenever they're in the field. And I think there's almost kind of almost like a moral duty on people who are going to these situations to do these first aid courses, because there is a chance, if you're in Misrata or in certain places in Afghanistan or whatever, that somebody near to you, like you, but what happened to you, is going to be very seriously injured, and what are you going to do if you have to stand by and you don't know how to respond to that? I mean, it could be you, and you're totally reliant on the person beside you, having done this training. But likewise, you're not going to feel great about it if you're suddenly you're thinking, oh, I knew I didn't have time to fit in that medical refresher. I think it's really. I mean, it amazes me that in normal life, everybody isn't taught really serious first aid training anyway, because car accidents and so on. But I think in our business, it is absolutely essential.
I mean, Giles, you talked about how you were saved because you were the American military, and obviously when Tim Hetherington was killed, it was Hondros, they didn't have proper help around. Perhaps if they had been with that kind of team.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't be able to speculate on what happened with them, but I think it's a pretty simple assumption that if you're with a group of people, and if you're wondering what happens if one of them suddenly gets blown up and loses their legs, whether you'll be able to help them. If you can't think you're going to help them, the chances are they're probably not able to help you. I mean, if you're with a group of people that aren't experienced or aren't trained, I think it's just a responsibility that everybody in that situation should be able to help the other person.
And it's not even. I think that being with somebody who loses a limb is a very unlikely scenario for most filmmakers to find themselves in. But the first aid courses don't just deal with that. They deal with people are much more likely, like I say, to have car accidents. The closest we've ever come to somebody dying on unreported world was because of heat stroke, and the reporter who was with them was able to identify from the symptoms that they were exhibiting that it was really, really, really serious. And actually, they were in the middle of the jungle, and she ended up being able to. We have a system where we always have a doctor 24 hours on call. Immediately got put through to them and was told what to do, and the doctor estimated that they were 3 or 4 minutes away from dying because of the lack of responsiveness. So these heat, drinking bad water, having car accidents, these are things that you need to know how to respond to, or I mean at the very least they're going to completely screw up your shoot, but actually they're going to be potentially life-threatening as well. So actually a 2-day really good first aid course can cover all of that, I think.
Vaughan, you've been very involved with this whole safety issue, and you've actually been sort of developing a white paper about safety, and you had a big sort of conference in Frontline Club recently. Aside from the medical stuff, what else can be done to help protect journalists, make them safer, encourage safety?
Well, I think the most important thing, which was touched on by Siobhan in terms of this whole idea that you would do a proper assessment of the risks involved. I mean, we have this idea of a risk assessment being a very boring thing, but it is obviously nuts to go and take a risk without a reward, and one can do that too often. So I think one needs to be very clear about why one's going and what the journalist's benefits are and what one's responsibilities are. I think that touching on your responsibilities to other people with you is an extremely important one that's just been covered. I think that the industry has reached a point now, which is quite interesting, whereby we were assuming and very aware of the risks before the Iraq invasion, and people were very conscious of it. Then we got into this embedding thing in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the risks were actually lower because you had all this assistance available, soldiers and medevac and things like that. We're suddenly now back into Syria and places like that, where it's feeling really uncomfortable for us, because of course the risks have been getting larger, but we haven't been in the stories that are the most dangerous. And so it's become very, very acute for the industry, which is why there are events like this, and we're doing a white paper, and we're trying to gather as many people together as possible who can really help us try and work out better procedures, where we can actually advise people, and where the industry collectively, and importantly freelancers, can actually improve their safety.
I mean, Giles, there's more knowledge than ever, perhaps, about sort of safety issues and hostile environment courses and medical courses and so on, but in this past year, more journalists have been killed than I can recall any time, and even very experienced journalists who worked often in conflict zones like Tim Hetherington or Hondros or Colvin Why is that? Is it more dangerous?
I mean, I don't know if it is more dangerous, if there's more people going, or what. You know, I mean, I was asked a while back to write something for The Guardian about the soldiers that most influenced me in my career. And as I wrote this without really thinking, and sort of sent it to them, they did these little biogs, and then realising that all 8 of them had died in conflicts, you know, and these were going back all the way to the 1920s. So, you know, historically, I mean, it's a dangerous profession. I think, you know, somebody asked me recently, you know, what's the best advice I could give about going to these war zones, and I said, well, don't go. I mean, that's the only sort of safe advice I can give. There is going to be a risk all the time, but, you know, obviously people will go, but I think it is really important, and sort of what Vaughan was touching on is, you should be there, and you have to question why you're there, I think if you're there for a reason, that's one thing, but so many people, I think, are going to places without a real reason, without a real story to be told, and that, I think, is the first risk assessment always, is why you're there. If you haven't got a reason for being there, you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I mean, in Libya last year, there were a lot of freelancers turning up who were kind of almost like war tourists to a certain extent and sort of running around. And, you know, people have, the argument counter-argues, well, you know, you have to start somewhere. How are you going to get experiences? You go to this place, which is, I agree. I mean, you know, people obviously entitled to take those risks themselves, but it is, I think, really critical that they have thought through what they're trying to do.
But I think it's interesting that people say, you know, you've got to start somewhere. Somewhere like Libya, everybody seemed to be drawn to that like a magnet. I mean, when I started, I purposely looked at small places that maybe were coming out of conflict, areas where, you know, Angola, and places where there still had a lot of stories to be told. You know, there's a lot of important work to be done in those places, but they weren't full on front lines. I didn't think I'm going to head straight to a front line, straight to a war zone.
But do you think if Libya had happened when you were at that stage, you would have gone no?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's say for me. I mean, there was plenty of, you know, wars going on at that time. But for me, there are stories to be told. I don't know if people, you know, I always think if I go to somewhere where there's another photographer working, I've gone to the wrong place because, you know, somebody else is doing it. I've always gone to places where there isn't anybody else. So for me, the reason of going to say somewhere like Libya, when there was, you know, the world's best photographers and best filmmakers there, what would I be bringing to that equation? I think people have to go through that thought process. I mean, that's the first safety check.
I'm sure it has become too dangerous. I mean, this must factor in when you're thinking of commissioning.
I mean, I think the kind of neutrality of the journalist has definitely diminished in a lot of places, particularly with the advent of the war on terror and so on. So I think that targeting of journalists probably is on the increase. Whether it's actually more dangerous or not, I think is really hard to gauge. I think this last year was, you know, was a year of incredible tumult and revolution, and people, yeah, it's quite extraordinary, and we probably won't see, I imagine, something like that for quite a while. So, you know, it's very hard to gauge whether more people have actually been killed. And also whether it's more dangerous, because, you know, technology and networks and the way we communicate now has actually made it in many ways much safer, because you get very, very up-to-date information, you know, by the minute information very, very easily, no matter where in the world you are, and that certainly wasn't the case, you know, some time ago. So I think there are advantages now. There are things that have made made it easier to go to these places. But certainly, I think for local journalists and local filmmakers around the world, I think that it has definitely become more dangerous for them, for sure.
I mean, I'd like to sort of open up to the floor as soon as we can, but there's one other issue that we really wanted to address, which Vaughan, I'd like you to maybe touch on, was this whole notion of getting a story and getting a commission and the issues involved with that, because it's often a grey area, isn't it? It's a tricky area, isn't it?
Well, yes, I mean, there's historically, I mean, I've been freelance for 20, 25 years, there's always a difficult relationship with the freelancers and the industry. And part of it is the commissioning thing. But actually, for me, that's not really the hard bit. The hard bit is there are instances increasingly where a freelancer will take a risk. And one has to bear in mind that journalism is becoming increasingly freelance. There are many, many more, and they serve an important part of journalism as the more traditional journalism decreases in commercial strength. And also the internet allows us to more people to engage, and freelancing has always been in response to technology. But essentially what's beginning to happen now is broadcasters, and CNN will do it, BBC will do it, Channel 4 I believe will do it, will often feel hesitant about buying material from freelancers because they feel they may be encouraging those freelancers to take risks. And this is a very troubling thing, Because at the same time, many freelancers will say, well, hang on, yes, we do feel the industry should take some responsibility for us. I mean, I did a survey recently, and 45% felt that if a journalist gets hurt or injured, the broader, the freelancer, the broader industry has some responsibility, but that responsibility is linked to the level of relationship they've historically had with them, which is quite interesting. But then the other side of it, a lot of these people who won't take footage from freelancers because they're worried about encouraging them to take risks, will still take footage of locals who aren't journalists, off a mobile phone or something like that. And so they're still, in theory, encouraging them to take risks. So the thing is very, very difficult. And I personally am very much on the side that actually journalism's interests are served by journalists sometimes taking risks. Journalism is owned by those people who do journalism ultimately, not necessarily just by organisations who necessarily sometimes fund it. So it's a bit of a minefield.
I mean, it's not exactly your area, it's all commissioning specific programs, but I mean, what about that bigger picture?
Well, I mean, it's straight out. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the unit that I only commission freelancers, so everybody that makes everybody that makes film for us is either as a reporter or as a camera producer director. They're all freelancers, so it's not really an issue that that I have to deal with on a daily basis. But what I think is difficult is when what I think is not to be encouraged is if commissioners, somebody comes to pitch a story and they say, no, it's too dangerous, and then the person comes back with the story and they take it anyway. I think that is really quite, that you're then just abdicating responsibility for that person whenever they're there. But I think that, and also I think if somebody, a freelancer, develops a reputation as somebody that doesn't take safety seriously, that puts themselves at risk, other people at risk, they're fixers. Well, I think people are within their right then saying, well, that's not somebody that I'm going to take footage of, commissioner or otherwise. But there will be, of course, there will be material that walks in the door from freelancers all the time. I imagine that is so compelling that, of course, you have to tell a story that absolutely needs to be told. I think that then broadcasters have a responsibility to talk to the other person then, at that point of contact, how they got their material, was there a way that they could have got it better, have they actually done training, have they encouraged them down those routes, I think just can't wash your hands on that.
Well, I just wanted to add something as well, because I think it's terribly important. I think there's a way forward through this. But at the same time, there's a tendency for the industry, and I believe and this is a wide industry, it's not Channel 4. Channel 4 is advanced and progressive when it comes to freelance. But the wider industry, I think, lives in a sort of fear and an insecurity, because it's worrying stuff, this. And we're too inclined to blame the freelance or think that they're worse. And you always see stories or, the damn freelance shouldn't be there, they don't have a right to be there, or they're too dangerous, or whatever. And whereas I completely agree that there should be an expectation that nobody should go without having some first aid, being able to look after other people and themselves. At the same time, we've got to guard against this. But let me point to the way forward on this, and I'm convinced of it. I think there's an opportunity for us to promote something like a kite mark, where we can actually start encouraging freelancers to take, professionalise and take safety more seriously, and freelancers mentor each other. So there's an opportunity to promote better practice. I recall when I started as a freelance, I absolutely, this 20 years ago plus, I realised I had to subscribe to the industry's views of ethics, and we did, and we thrived. We didn't necessarily get on very well with the industry, but they bought our stuff because it fitted. We have an opportunity to promote that sort of thing amongst freelancers if the industry will support sort of kite mark. And this is what I'm personally trying to campaign about at the moment, because I think there's a tremendous opportunity. I just want to get that in there.
I mean, Charles, you've been at the coalface as a freelancer. Have you ever been in a situation where those bastards won't take my material or taking all these risks?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's slightly different. I'm less of a photojournalist and more telling stories. I think most of my photographs are not actually necessarily of the wars themselves, but they're in war zones to take those pictures. But I think, certainly from the photography side of things, I can totally understand how, as somebody that's wanting to break into an industry and wanting to do something, you are very aware that potentially by taking that extra risk, by going around the next corner, by putting yourself further out there, you might get the photograph that the other people haven't got. And I think it's very hard to well, you can't legislate against that, or you can't, you know, how would somebody on a picture there to make that decision? Because everybody that's out there photographing a war zone is taking risks, and at what point do you say, well, it looks like this person's gone too far, or they've gone, you just simply, you can't do that. I think, yeah, the front is one, that's a pretty use that phrase. But I think, you know, at the same time, if somebody builds a reputation for being, you know, too gung-ho, but then at the same time, you know, we also, I grew up reading about some photographers from the Vietnam War and kind of mythologizes people for being, you know, met Tim Page a few times, and I mean, like, the stories of what he used to get up to, sort of legendary, and people are sort of brought up on that as a role model for how you should be in these places.
There's quite a lot of that, and there's quite a lot of testosterone fuel boasting about people's exploits that I think sometimes is really not very healthy.
Sort of over-gentle.
Right.
Well, I think that's a great moment to throw this discussion open to the floor. I hope people have some questions for the panel. Raising, I mean, it's raising a lot of interesting questions. Don't be shy. Lady here? Yeah. Sorry, I should just say there's a microphone, so just wait for the mic, that'd be great.
Hi, Anne-Marie from Wellbeing Films. I wanted to share an experience and want to just ask the panel a question based on that. I spent most of last summer in the Western Mountains of Libya making 2 documentaries for Al Jazeera, as it turned out. I went with a group of amateur fighters from Britain who had no idea what they were doing. By the time I'd set off with them, with a small team and a security advisor from AKE, interestingly, I knew them very well. And I knew that they'd make a great subject for a film because they were going to take risks and they didn't know what they were doing. They were estate agents, kebab shop owners, etc. So I went into it with my eyes wide open. The point I wanted to share with you was that this documentary started off actually as a programme for the BBC. And they decided very shortly before we left that it was too risky. Not so much based on security issues, but on whether we'd be able to finish the project. Because, you know, you've got to know that we could deliver something, and there was no telling whether these guys would ever get to Tripoli. But we did, actually, so that was good. So I then went to Al Jazeera, who I've worked with a lot over the years, and I offered it to them, and they jumped at it, and off we went. We did have a very hefty security protocol, and we did have, as I say, someone to look after us. We were also insured because, and that's really why we had the advisor, because we couldn't get insurance if we didn't. The insurance is incredibly expensive, massively expensive for the size of the budget, and it was very difficult to get. And in fact, at one point, it was taken away from us, and we were asked if we would leave our very expensive HD camera on the border at Tunisia, because they wouldn't insure it, which obviously was not really a very safe idea.
Did the insurance have to come out of your budget? Do you have to pay for it?
Yeah, we had to pay for it, but Al Jazeera gave us enough to pay for it, and they gave us enough for our security advisor. But that was the point. I mean, you know, the budget was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it wasn't being spent on us. So, you know, we had a very, very good security advisor who was earning far more than we were to advise us on our insecurity. And we were paying a lot of money for insurance, which was ballooning. So my question really is, I mean, I feel as an indie, because, you know, there are lots of freelancers there in Libya last year. There weren't that many indies, I don't think, were there any really?
What, no.
No,
Very few.
I think that's a shame, because I think independent companies have a lot to offer us, particularly in niche expertise in different places. But it is very, very difficult to envisage a situation where you're going to be able to afford to go and persuade a broadcaster that it's worth it. And my question, I guess, is mainly to you, Siobhan, do you see a time, or is there already a time when you can't send people because it's just too expensive to get them in and out, with all the safety protocols, the insurance, the advisors, the you name it?
No, I don't see a time whenever you won't send people to these places. I don't. I mean, I think insurance is a really, really major issue for freelancers in indies, and we've talked an awful lot about it. And I mean, at the last frontline session that we did, it was one of the big issues that we thought we actually might be able to make headway on and take forward in some way. But no, I can't imagine not sending people. I mean, the notion that you have to have a security guard to make you safe, I don't subscribe to that, because I think that actually people within teams with a certain level of experience can be just as safe. I mean, there are certain places that if I'm sending a team, I do think that having somebody from AKE is an advantage on occasion, but I definitely don't think that it's something that we'll put a security advisor on and that automatically makes it safe. I mean, the personnel that are going on it have to be experienced enough to deal with the situation, and they're the ones that are going to be making major decisions about where they go and where they don't go. So I would put much more responsibility on them than on the security advisor. That's my
The budgets are increasingly tight, aren't they? When you have to factor in a security guy who's charging God knows what, it can actually affect commissions, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, your budget needs to be higher if you've got an AKE involved. That's for sure. Yeah, you can't do the same film with an AKE advisor or without on the same budget, because they are hugely expensive. They are. I mean, we do on occasion use them, but not very often, to be honest.
Do you think they're helpful? Do you think they're useful? What's your experience?
I think they can be. I mean, it's horses for courses, isn't it? I mean, sometimes they're appropriate. I think the point about who else is on the team is very relevant. I mean, there are cameramen or producers with, not enough as there should be actually, and I think that's a product of the fact that the industry separates these skills out. I mean, your producer should have safety skills of equivalence in the ideal world. I think they are worth the money on the right shoe.
But also, I mean, I would much rather that somebody had the right fixer on the ground than a security expert. I mean, that's the thing that's going. That is the thing that's going to keep you. That's the thing that's going to make your film for a start. That's the thing. That's the person that's going to unlock the door to the material that you want to get, and it's the person that is going to keep you most safe as well. I mean, on the Nupa Mountains film, it all came down really to who the fixer was, and it to being somebody who has 30 years experience, who knew absolutely everybody, who could talk them out of trouble no matter which part of the country they were in. Somebody from AKE would have been completely useless in that situation. It'd have to be a Sudanese. So I think it's actually can be dangerous and expensive if you're using it just as it's like a sticking plaster. Well, that makes it safe. Well, no, I don't think it actually necessarily does.
At least they can carry the tripod.
That's true. Although they have actually made me carry the tripod on occasion.
I mean, while we're on this subject, everyone, you have been raising this issue of insurance, especially for freelancers. And for example, Anton Hammerl, who's a South African photographer who was killed in Libya last year, didn't have any insurance. And recently there was an auction in New York to raise money for his family. He has 3 young children who need to support it. And he had absolutely no insurance. He died, and obviously there was no legacy to hand on. I mean, how important do you think that is an issue? And I mean, most freelancers don't really have issues.
I think it's a really big issue, and it's a massive problem. I mean, you're absolutely right. Most freelancers don't. I mean, I have myself, when I've been doing it alone, which is most of my time, I have had insurance only once. I have a house.
Through a channel? Through one of the
when I'm doing it on my own, on my own back as a complete independent, I've had insurance once, resented paying it, but then I have a house and I'll lose my house if I go. So that's the way it would happen. But look, I think there are ways forward, but the thing about insurance is you need enough people contributing to bring the cost down for everybody. And we're not going to get any form of freelance insurance until there's a sort of proper, sensible collaboration with a lot of organisations in the industry who can combine their insurance to somehow deliver the sort of quantity. Whether that's achievable in the next 10 years, I don't know, but I think it's worth trying.
Does that kind of answer what you were...
The other question I had really was for Giles, that, we met many freelance photographers, people working for newspapers, and they don't have a hope in hell of having an advisor looking after them, do they? You're not accepted in newspapers. Do you think there are occasions when it would help?
No, I mean, that's the thing about, as a photographer, I mean, I don't even like travelling with a journalist. I mean, it's something about being on your own, and that's the great advantage. So the idea of having sort of, running around with a security advisor next to me is kind of, just doesn't it just would never happen. I think one of the things that's important as a freelancer, and I think something that I would have probably benefited more at the beginning of my career, not so much going on a course, but having somebody posing all these questions to me, because I think there's a lot of things, a lot of scenarios that you just don't envisage. When I first went to Angola, you know, I was thinking about people shooting and all these different. I wasn't thinking about what would happen to me if I had a car accident. How would I get out? You know, you don't have these questions, and I think that's one of the good things about in a team is people are maybe asking those questions, having somebody commissioning is asking those questions. When you're truly freelance and you just go into those places, then there's nobody maybe, you know, bringing up those questions. So I think that's something that's lacking, and maybe, you know, if there was more sort of integration between freelancers to sort of when people are going off, you know, other people say, well, have you thought about this? Or, you know, just well, maybe like a mentoring scheme. Yeah.
What about your own company? What happened
with me? I mean, funny enough, I've never really had insurance because most of the places I've been to, it's just virtually impossible to get. Ironically, actually, I was insured when I went to Afghanistan, and that insurance was done through Reporters Without Borders, or who they advised. But again, being embedded and trying to get insured as a complete freelancer is ridiculously expensive. But I did have it. But I mean, they pay out nothing because they said they wouldn't pay medical expenses. So I mean, it's left me bankrupt, getting blown up. You know, it's the most expensive thing I've ever done.
So what's happened with all your medical treatment? Has it been covered?
Well, because it was the US military just did it, and you know, did pro bono, and then I've been on the NHS. So actually, the insurance company has gone off and said, well, we don't have to pay anything. So the irony was I was paying, I think it was, you know, I mean, it was hundreds of pounds a week. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of money, which coming out of a freelancer's pocket is, you know, a huge amount of cost. But as I say, for me, I've ended up, you know, with nothing. I've lost my, you know, I lost my place, I lost everything. So.
Such a lesson. There's a gentleman at the back. Can we get the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah. I'm Charles Lee from the Docs magazine. I made an interview with Sofia Amara. She went to Homs as a documentary filmmaker 2 days before Colvin was there, dying. And of all the rushes she took, there was only 10% of the rare rough cuts that she used in the film. So maybe I have a question to Sinerton or maybe Julie about, is there a limit to what you're going to do reporting? I mean, some of the images are so rough that you can't show it on television. And do you in your courses, what they say, teach people to limit themselves for what to report on? Some images is too harsh to see.
Are you talking ethically?
Ethically, I'm more kind of, people may be risking their lives to take images that nobody can see because of the television reporting is saying, no way. Sofia Amara gave 90% of the rough images to Amnesty, not television.
Sorry, can I just understand this question? So you're saying, should people in those situations limit the risk they're taking?
Should you warn these people to not go too far? I mean, maybe sometimes they're risking to take images that nobody will buy. Channel 4 will maybe not buy them at all. Of course, it's going too far, maybe.
I mean, obviously, we're regulated into what we can show at what times, but you know, we on occasion and judiciously and after an awful lot of consideration, we do sometimes show very, very distressing images. I mean, we have to show them late at night, you know, after 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night, and with lots and lots of warnings. But you know, we made a film called Syria's Torture Machine, which went out in December, which showed terribly distressing and graphic images of children that had been tortured to death, because we felt that it was absolutely justified in the context of that programme. You know, there's been so much denial from the Syrian regime about that this torture was going on, that we felt it was absolutely necessary to show it in the context of that programme. So, and likewise actually with the 2 Sri Lanka films that we've done about the war crimes in Sri Lanka, some of that footage has been very, very disturbing. So I think on occasion you do show it. I think people do need to be prepared for the impact that it has on them of filming that sort of material. I think before you filmed it, you don't actually realise that it kind of has very serious consequences for you later on, and that's something that, that commissioners and production companies need to be aware of with their staff, that filming that sort of material can actually really be very disturbing.
I mean, Giles, have you been in a situation where you've taken photos which you thought were very important, but they were too graphic to publish?
Yeah, I mean, for me,
frustration from that?
I mean, for me personally, I've always tried to avoid doing anything that's too graphic. Simply for me, my personal sort of way of taking pictures, I've always thought if somebody looks at one of my photographs and says, "Oh, I had to look away," then I've made a mistake because I want to take photographs that draw people in. But that's just my personal editorial style. You know, it's everybody has a different way of doing it. I don't think in a way you can be taught, or you would be in a situation where you think, well, I'm not going to bother taking these pictures because I probably won't get them published because they might be too graphic. I think at that point you're just there because you want to tell the story and it's important to document it. At least that's how I work, and I certainly wouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm just going to go home because I probably won't get this picture sold. You don't work in that scenario when you're there, so I don't think you can be taught about that.
But also, I think that that the audience you engage them more and you make them care more about the story with the living rather than with the dead, to be perfectly honest. And if you find other ways of telling those stories through survivors or people that were witnesses or people that knew it, that's actually, I think, it can draw an audience in much more than very extreme images, which actually sometimes can make people just want to turn over.
Well, Yvonne, you must be in a situation where you film very graphic stuff, and I mean, I know from my experience, sometimes with filming, if people could see how bad things were, maybe it would make an impact and maybe it would affect, you know, international deliberation over this issue.
Well, I always try. I film a lot. I film what I know is going to get on telly. I film what might get on telly, and I'll film the rest just with someone. You're there, and somebody needs to. And you've taken the record. So, I mean, I think you push to get as much on as you can. That's what you do.
And have you ever been frustrated there was something you
felt
all the
time. I mean,
graphic, and thought, well, this should be on, but it's not on.
Yes, but I think when I remember when I started, I couldn't understand why it couldn't be on, and one does understand that actually, if you're a broadcaster, and remember, as a freelancer, you can whack it on the internet. If the broadcaster don't take it, stick it on the internet. So it can get used. But I think you can, if you perpetually put graphic stuff on television, then the audience lose interest, and it's crying wolf ultimately, isn't it? So you do have to moderate it. Mind you, as a freelance, if it is very graphic, you can always sell it to the Japanese. They'll like it.
That was true. I was one of the first times I went to Somalia. These guys were filming amputations, and I said, "You're never going to get that on TV." No, we're doing it for Japanese TV. They take anything. So something worth bearing in mind if you're a freelancer. We're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes. So if there's any other questions, this is a great opportunity to fire away. There's a couple of questions down here at the front.
How do you navigate the risk posed to local people that you're working with, fixers, translators, drivers, and so on?
Giles, would you like to say something?
I mean, that's just it's a very difficult question. Obviously, it's something you have to be incredibly careful of. I'm always very clear with people about whether their faces can be in photographs, and being very aware that you take somebody's photograph doing something or talking, or take their words, and then they can be printed over here, and the consequences of that person. You have to be incredibly astute about that. For me personally, because I'm not working in film, it's never been such a problem. But I think you have to be very aware.
Well, no, I just I mean, at the Frontline Club we have a fund for fixers, and in my experience, the industry as a whole is normally pretty poor with its fixers. I remember being in Kosovo when the whole press corps left, and they did so pretty quickly, and very few organisations gave a thought about the fixers who had been helping them and what was going to happen. So it is an area that we need to think about. In the past, though, I've often married my fixers. I found that.
Well, that's one way to thank them.
I've done it twice.
I mean, I think.
Might try again.
Oh, clearly, you have to be really good. I mean, I've never married any fixers. I'm really sorry. It's very disappointing of me. But you do. Obviously, you have to be really careful with your rushes. I think it's like to get really technical on it for a minute. I think making sure. I mean, if we're somewhere undercover, for example, Zimbabwe or Eritrea or somewhere like that, we have very, 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 very elaborate arrangements so that the team never ever travel with their brushes on them. So they'll be left behind to the shoot and they'll be taken out of the country separately, or so that if you are stopped, you're not, you don't necessarily have all your brushes on you that the security forces are going to be able to go through and identify everybody who's just helped you in your program. So I think, and I also think that if you're going to obscure, if you are going to obscure somebody and you know that you're going to obscure somebody, then I always try and encourage teams to film them like that rather than blobbing when they come back, so that if rushes do fall into the hands of their people that would would love to get their hands on it, that they are actually anonymous on the tapes as well. I mean, there's a limit to how far you can go, but.
And there are more and more technical things that can be done now, and there's sort of specialist technical to encrypt.
Yeah.
And stop people accessing.
Yeah, I mean, communications is a whole other area actually, and it's another thing that I think we need to work on a lot more as an industry. We need to collate all the anecdotal stuff about what are the best and most safest ways to communicate with people in the field so that you don't put them in danger. You know, first of all, it was Skype was the safest way, and then draft emails were the safest way, and is a sat phone safe to communicate on? And I think you have to be really, really careful about how you're communicating with people so that you don't get them into really big trouble as well.
George, you want to add something there?
Well, I was just going to say to be very careful about your cover stories as well, because I made a really, really stupid mistake once, and I was in Angola, in a very remote part, being taken over by government forces, and the local area, a lot of women there had been married to rebel soldiers, and they were terrified they were getting persecuted. And somebody working in a local NGO had taken me and showing me all these different places. And we got stopped at one point, and this guy was terrified that he had brought in a journalist. And we were going under the cover that I was working for this NGO, and that's why I was there. And he was like, whatever you do, don't say you're a journalist. And we got taken to this local sort of warlord who was the kind of caricature of metal all across his chest, big desk with piled up with papers, and the rest of them sat there. And this guy sat next to me, really nervous, he's shaking. He said, don't say you're a journalist. And I'm like, no, I won't say that. So this guy says to me, so, why are you here? Why are you in my land? I'm like, oh, I'm working for this NGO. What are you here for? I'm like, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer. Heavy plant machinery. I don't know why, that's the first thing that came to my head. He sat there for a while, looking at me, and then he comes up, this is Randy. He goes, so you come fix my generator tomorrow. So the next day I had to go to this guy's compound and was given like a big toolbox and this generator and this sort of hammer going. So yeah, be careful with your cover stories.
Yeah, I mean, you can only stretch it so far being a bird watcher and sort of Iraq and stuff. I think there's another question at the front as well. There was another lady interested.
When you're planning trips to difficult countries and your main way in is local human rights activists, what are the other precautions that you put in place? Who do you touch base with? I know it's a case-by-case basis, but are there any kind of basic things that you look at?
Are you sort of referring particularly to a place like Syria, or just generally?
Just generally.
Working with activists?
Yeah.
I mean, are there issues there? I mean, I suppose if they've got a particular agenda, is there?
Well, I've never levered activists, so I can't really comment on that.
I mean, with your Syria film,
yeah,
they're kind of activists, I suppose, fighters.
Yeah, they're sort of. They certainly weren't. They weren't fighters. They were sort of activist journalists, which is sort of that weird hybrid. There's a lot of in Syria. I mean, I think you have to make sure that you're all on the same page, that they understand that you are independently that they may be helping you with logistics, but editorially you're completely independent, and it may be that they don't actually, they're not going to control what you do in any way. So I think that you have to be really open and honest about that. I think you have to know also that where people's boundaries are, and have established really, really clearly that they are aware of the risks that they're taking, and that they are absolutely prepared to take it. And we did a film a couple of years ago in Burma with a group of activist journalists there, and I ended up going. They came out to the Thai border, and I ended up meeting them face to face, because the risks were really quite high for them, and I wanted to actually look at their face and say, do you understand the risks that you are taking? And interestingly, I said, you could go to prison for a long time, or you could get killed doing this. And they said, they just looked at me like I was completely mad, and said, it's not even that we want to do this. We feel that we have to do this, and actually we'd rather die than not do this. So I think that you have to be really, really sure that people know what they're getting themselves.
I think it does raise some tricky issues. I mean, Syria is one example. I know that a lot of of journalists obviously have travelled in with the activists, writers, whatever it may be. And I remember this story recently of where some of the actors were filming, they were making their own smoke to make it look more dramatic. And then someone did a story about this on Channel 4, and then other people were criticising the reporter for doing that story because they have to rely on these activists to get in now, and they kind of complicate the relationship. So I think there are a lot of quite tricky issues to deal with there, and I don't think there is a very easy answer. No, Giles, do you want to have the last word on that?
No, I mean, because again, I haven't really worked in that scenario.
You just have to try and be honest, even if on occasion that shuts down your access.
So yeah, honesty, a final thought. Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Vaughan Smith, Siobhan Sinton, Giles. Thanks for being here.